Humans on the cardboard, welcome back to Just Nuts, guys. It has been a hot minute since I have done a actual deck profile on the channel, but I'm very excited to get back to it. We're about to get Grand Creators in like, what, a week and a half, 2 weeks. When we get that, it opens up a lot of cool deck profiles. I might look at Exorcisters. I might look at doing a handful of cool decks that get a lot of help from the Adventure Token archetype, but we will obviously deal with that when we get there. But today, we are looking at spell books. Now, this isn't pure spell books. I think if you want to play spell books in any sort of competitive fashion, you need to have the Dogmatika engine in there. The synergy is just too damn good, and spell books just don't do damn enough, really. I've seen builds that do like the Jaugen stun variant, which is cool, but like Jaugen's just so weak and it's so small that like so many decks can just walk over it and like have no problem for it. So I just don't think it's consistently good enough at setting that up. But yeah, without further ado, let's just get into this. I think I'm only missing one card. We'll get there when we get there. I'll explain that. But yeah, this deck's really cool. It's a heavy control resource type deck. To me, it kind of resembles Sky Striker. I think if you were ever to look at Sky Striker and be like, what was like the early gen Sky Striker? I think for me, it's probably spell books, a lot of searching, heavily spell based, good amount of utility, just not as much as Sky Striker and not as consistent and good and resilient as Sky Strikers are. But yeah. All right, moving on. Let's get into this thing. Starting off, of course, with our best normal summon of the deck, Spellbook Magician of Prophecy. Yeah, I mean, he's just good. I don't really know what do you want. He's a +1, and he can also go into Artemis, which is very important. He's also water, which comes up as well a little bit down the line. We'll get there when we get there. Good. Of course, for the Dogmatika engine, we play our triple Ecclesia. There, I mean, just an awesome extender and also like your second best normal summon if need be. It's not even that bad to have to normal it. And we play our double Maximus and one Fleur-de-Lis. I know some people like to play triple Maximus, but the problem with Maximus is it's not a starter. It's an extender, and it's only an extender if you're able to put any extra card like in the graveyard or you're going second. So I don't want to play 3 of this and then like brick on it because I draw 1 or 2 of these and I didn't draw either like a Nadir or a spellbook like engine or way, or my opponent disrupts me from getting any extra deck monsters into the grave or anything like that. And so in those situations, this card literally just dies in your hand, which is horrible. And you need to play the Fleur-de-Lis. It really helps you be more offensive. This is a very defensive deck, so having Fleur-de-Lis to jump on the field and really help you push for a lot more damage is actually really huge. And also, it's just one of those cards that, like, in certain situations, that interruption can be the difference between winning and losing. So this is really it for your monster engine, just 9 cards, and they do the job very, very consistently. I mean, that is the biggest thing of this deck, is consistency is here for sure, like in spades. Then for the hand traps, you know, nothing too crazy. Triple Ash, this is hopefully for Fusion Destiny or any other power cards you might be playing against there. Because this deck is definitely one of those decks that, like, it's really annoying to just deal with DPE. So we want to have our best chance to take care of him or keep him from even hitting the field if we can. Triple Veiler, this is for the Verte Anaconda that would summon it, or, you know, just anything. And, like, that's the cool thing, too, is, like, obviously you have the big threats in the meta that you want these cards to hit, but even if you just, you know, face a generic deck that this is like Veiler's decent against, you're hitting Moyes, you're hitting other stuff, and just, you know, hoping they don't have extenders. And then finishing up the hand traps, we've got the double Nib and the 1 Crow. I like the Nib because it's just high impact, and pairing it with any hand trap like usually is going to stop a turn of a meta deck. But also it's nice to just have that high impact hand trap in the main. Wiping our own field is usually not that terrible. Usually we almost always have follow-up in some form, whether it's an Ecclesia come in hand or a Blue Boy add back that's like pretty set up already. So that's pretty nice. So just having that high impact hand trap can just be so important to help like bridge the gap between our deck's lack of power relative to like meta decks and tier 2 decks and stuff. And then the Crow, this is like another thing that's awesome with DPE. If we can just get him to resolve his effect once, they wipe something, but then the DD Crow can at least keep him from wrecking us for the rest of the duel, and maybe at that point you would have already gotten enough resources to be able to grind out the opponent. So DD Crow is just pretty generically good versus most decks in the format right now. Then we get to the spells, and this is the main portion of the deck for sure. Spellbook of Secrets, of course, that's adding any spell book card from deck to hand. That's awesome. By the way, I didn't mention this before, but spellbooks are still one of those decks that I really want to see support for. I think spellcasters have just like such a nice little cluster of like solid cards right now that I would just love to see Konami kind of expand on the spellbook archetype. If we got more monsters, I think would be awesome, because realistically, when you look at the list of spellbook / prophecy monsters, Blue Boy is like it. There is like nothing else that has like made the climb through you know, through power creep and whatnot. They're all like been power creep to hell. They're just not good enough. So I would love to see some stuff come through there. Of course, we have triple Spellbook of Knowledge. This card's so good. Just draws 2 by sending any spellcaster from the field to the graveyard, or a spellbook card from hand. Just so good. Just digs you through your deck. I love this card for sure, because usually what you're sending to draw is like not that consequential. This is the only card I don't have access to right now. It's Spellbook of Fate. I actually ordered a playset like 2 weeks ago. The order ended up getting canceled, but I just didn't want to hold off this profile any longer, so I just said screw it. We'll proxy it, and then hopefully I'll get the cards in a little later on. But the card's crazy. If you don't know what it is, it's like a quick play, and it has the ability to either like Book of Moon something, non-targeting banish something, or the first effect. I can't even remember the first effect off the top of my head, because it's like not one you're really aiming to go for. It's the main disruption card in the spellbook package, and it's another thing I'd like to see is like, if we ever got spellbook support, I'd love to see like a secondary disruption type card that doesn't need a ton of setup for it. Like Sky Striker has Widow Anchor, and that's obviously the main disruption card, but they also have something like Shark Cannon. And this deck doesn't really have Shark Cannon, and also doesn't really have like another removal card. So I'd love to see like 1 or 2 more just solid utility cards that are fairly easy to set up. Like maybe you just need to control a spellcaster or banish a spellcaster from grave. Nothing too crazy, but it's nice to just have like a secondary and maybe even a third option as far as like super solid utility goes for the spellbook engine. I think that would help a decent bit. Let me move on. Double Spellbook of the Master. This card's pretty cool. It kind of lets you bypass like hard ones per turn cards if you have them, because if you control a spellcaster, you can reveal another spellbook in hand and then target a spellbook normal spell in grave and copy its effects. So you could like copy Secrets to draw again, or search again, I mean. You could copy Knowledge to send another spellcaster to draw 2 again, and so on and so forth. It only copies normal spells though, so you can't be copying Fate or anything, which is a little bit unfortunate, but still a cool card. And once you get it set up, it does feel really good. So 2 resolve. I don't know if 2 is 100% correct. 1 could probably be fine, but whatever. 1 copy of Spellbook of Eternity and 1 copy of Spellbook of Life, rounding out the rest of our spellbook cards. This one gets us back one of our banished spellbooks, so it's just good recursion. Not great turn 1, but great later on. And then Spellbook of Life. It's kind of like a weird Monster Reborn, but it's searchable for spellcasters, because you have to banish a spellcaster from grave, reveal a different spellbook spell in your hand, and then revive a different spellcaster in grave. So it kind of has a lot to kind of meet its requirement, but because it's searchable, it still feels like a pretty worthwhile one-off, especially since we can reborn stuff like Maximus or Ecclesia from grave to just like get their effects, because it doesn't negate them or anything, which is pretty cool. All right. One thing I do want to note is I think I have it over here. I'm not playing the Grand Spellbook Tower. I think it's an interesting card, but it's just way too slow, man. Drawing on what is it? Is it your next standby? Yeah, during your standby phase, you like can shuffle back a spellbook spell from your grave to then draw a card, or put it on the bottom of your deck to draw a card. I get it. That's cool. It's almost like you're drawing 2 cards every standby phase, or every draw phase, but it's just way too slow. Like, you would already have to be in a good position for that card to be great, and that puts you from a good position to a great position, but it's not helping you like come back in a lot of duels. It's usually just not going to be enough, because the reason you're in a hard spot is because you were playing too slow with like that card anyway. All right, anyway, moving on with the rest of our spells here. Triple Nadir Servant. I don't need to explain this. This is such a crazy power card in this deck. Gets us to our Dogmatika engine, which, let's face it, is definitely the stronger engine of the 2. But I do think Spellbook Dogmatika is better than pure Dogmatika, so I'm still happy about it. Also playing Triple Chalice. This is a utility card. I like this a lot. Like, it's just one of those cards. Like, it's decent going first, solid going, like really solid going second, and it's just a great utility card. The deck isn't really too synergistic with just like having normal spells, like strikers, just like utility spells, because like they just want to get 3 spells engraved no matter what. But just still having This card just could have been in permanence, but I decided to go with this because it's a little more flexible in my opinion, especially when you're playing second and you're playing into a board. Being able to just like blank Fleur or maybe even like the Chi Zhao from Tenyi, stuff like that is really important. One call, this is just another card that just says like, screw you, DPE, like, I hate you, you're the worst. Like, honestly, that card is so annoying. But yeah, this card is just another card that deals with that. Helps us play through hand traps if our hand is in like a weak position and like we do need to resolve certain stuff. That can come up. And then for the traps, we finish with 2 punishment and 1 Shaddoll Schism. This is pretty basic, I think. 3 punishments, probably just too many. 1's probably not enough if you're in a grind game and you want to resolve Ecclesia more than once in a duel to get multiple punishments. Having 2 of this can be really nice. And then, of course, Schism is just too good. You have to have a really crazy power play to go off of, like, your Dogmatika engine, because punishment, fleur, delete is fine, but, like, the floodgate that you get off of Schism is just above and beyond, like, for sure, like, the most powerful thing you can do with the Dogmatika package. So you got to take advantage of that while it's still legal, while we still have that around. And yeah, so 40 cards in the main. I'm going to be honest, like, in testing, this deck has been crazy consistent. I mean, between like you having like Spellbook Magician of Prophecy and your Spellbook of Secrets, there's 6 starters there. You've also got triple Ecclesia and triple Nadir, so you got like 12 starters, and then even just extenders. Like, you could argue like Knowledge helps you get into like consistency pieces and just draw a bunch of free cards, right? Maximus is an extender if you can just get any extra deck card in the graveyard, and you know, so much other stuff. Like, it's actually pretty consistent. I haven't really had any trouble with consistency up until this point, and that's great. So definitely check the deck out if you're interested in a super consistent control deck that just plays the resource game like really well. All right, next up here, we move to our extra deck real quick. The links are pretty self-explanatory. To Artemis, this is for mainly Blue Boy. Sometimes there can be weird hands with like a Veiler, but the goal here is when you're doing specific hands that like want to make Maximus live and you're in with the Spellbook engine, the goal is you need to put an extra card in the graveyard. So what we want to do to make Maximus summonable from hand is go Blue Boy, search Secrets, and then into Knowledge. However, whatever you start with, you're gonna end up with Knowledge. Then you want to turn the Blue Boy into Artemis, so that way when you do use your Knowledge, you're getting an extra card into the graveyard, and it's an extra 1 to make Maximus live. That's really the main reason, but it does come up, and so you need to play 2 of this because 1 sometimes isn't enough. Next up, we played 2 copies of Crowley, the first Prophecyr. This card's pretty cool. I wish that it searched like a specific spellbook card instead of like a random one, but it is what it is, I guess. Like, I don't know. Like, the card's fine, but you have, like, decently easy ways on, like, follow-up turns to, like, where you just have, like, Ecclesia still sitting on board, but you're not really doing much with it, and you normal summon a Blue Boy on that turn. You're just like, you know what? Let me get another free card. I don't really care about the damage. I don't really care about the bodies because I'm not going to do much with them. Let me just go for Crowley and get another free card out of this and keep my Spellbook engine going. Definitely comes up that way. And then for our final little package here, 1 Lina, 1 Celine, and 1 access code. These cards are here just to facilitate access code for the most part. I guess theoretically there's a handful of decks that would be playing a Dogmatika package as well, so being able to reborn a Maximus or an Ecclesia from our opponent's grave is actually pretty nasty in its own right, because we could reborn their Ecclesia and search off of it, which is crazy. But like also Linus, like 1, it's a spellcaster, it's a beater, it floats into like another Ecclesia or something, which is pretty good. So like that, also you can reborn something, then go into Celine, then Celine reborn a spellcaster from your grave, and then get up into access code that way. And then, you know, that's how you can, another way you can apply a lot of pressure in the deck for sure. Also thought about playing Hulk, because I am playing like Veiler and Ash Blossom, so just being able to normal summon those once you already have a body on field to go into Hulk and like pretty much just go straight up into an access code line. That's definitely something to look at if you think you don't need double Artemis or double Crowley. You could maybe make a little slot for that, just to make that play a little more viable. And then the rest of the stuff is mostly just punishment targets or send targets. 1 Toad, and then triple Untis. I have 3 here. Toad's actually specifically awesome in this deck. One, it allows us to have almost infinite sends, because if we're using Nadir, you have to send something, but like if there's nothing particularly amazing, like you've already gone through maybe the Shadal package, or you've already used like Titanic Clad and stuff, sometimes you're just like, let me send Toad, and then we'll put Toad back in the extra deck so we can send again without like depleting our extra deck utility cards too much. Or it adds any water back. So Blue Boy, he's a water. Like that's one of the coolest synergies for sure, that kind of recovery. And then into, some people don't play 3 of this, but I just love 3 of this because I feel like there are a good amount of duels where you just end up having Maximus on field, like turn after turn after turn. When you have 2 sends, I feel like just having that free pop is just like such a nice little utility. And sometimes 2 can go quick, especially if you're using your punishments. Maybe you're playing second with Nadir. You could use 1 or 2 of these within your turn and your opponent's turn. And then when you get back around to it, you might want that 3rd one a little later on. So I like having 3 personally. But that's just me. There's plenty of other cards. You could play Cyframe Gear Omega, you could play Fossil Warrior Skull Knight, and there's other things too. Like the Wind Pegasus I also really like. Obviously, we just played the generic 3 Shadal cards. You send Cologne, you add, and then potentially send Schism. Depends on what the rest of your hand looks like. Sometimes you send Construct to add back the Schism, or sometimes you just like send another card and then keep the Schism and go straight into Winda that way. But yeah. Fully necessary to play all 3 if you're going to play that Shadal package. It's one of the downsides. It does take a good chunk of your extra deck. And then with Titanic Clad, this just gets you follow-up. I would consider almost playing 2 of this, depending on situations, because just being able to rotate continuously into more searches, more follow-up. But with maybe only 1 fleur-de-lis, maybe it's worth to only play 1 of this guy, because you don't really want to go with 2 in on the fleur-de-lis stuff. But yeah, that's pretty much it. The deck's really cool, guys. I think it's a fun deck. It's one of those that I think like has future potential too, because this deck kind of, even though it's these 2 specific archetypes at this point, there's synergy of just like generic spellcaster stuff. So I could definitely see a way where like somewhere down the line it just becomes spellcaster good stuff, just kind of like how bee troopers are bug, like insect good stuff, and we've got, you know, machine good stuff with Earth Machine and all that, all those decks. This could be the same thing. I mean, knowledge is searchable in this engine, and this sends any spellcaster from field to draw 2. You've also got stuff like Magician's Souls floating around. We've got Magician's Restage, which is kind of a crazy like reborn spell for low-level spellcasters. So if the deck goes in a specific direction, or maybe we get more spellbook monsters and they're low level, like level 3 or lower, that card becomes a crazy extender. It really just depends. But we've got, you know, Celine, we've got the Charmers, we've got Crowley, we've got Artemis. We've got so many like actually already good like just spellcaster extra deck cards that help facilitate certain spellcaster things that I really do think there's a future there, and all it may need is just like a couple of connecting pieces to really open the way for more stuff to kind of just jump into the pile. And I'm going to be ready for it for sure. So let me know in the comment section your thoughts on this list here. I know it's nothing too crazy, honestly. If you're just playing this specific version, you kind of just play the Dogmatic engine, play the Spellbook engine. There may be small discrepancies on ratios and what utility cards to play. And then after that, it's kind of like what generic utility cards do you want to play? Hand traps and like your chalices and whatnot. So there's not a ton of wiggle room there, but it is still a cool deck, and I highly recommend you check it out if you have not yet. But yeah. That's going to do it from here today, guys. I've rambled enough on this one. Let me know your thoughts on the deck down below. If there's anything you would change, if there's anything you would suggest looking at, maybe adding to the list a little bit later on. But yeah, I'm going to get the hell out of here. Thank you so much for watching. Subscribe to the channel if you want to see more stuff from me down the line. And I'll see you in the next one. Peace.